Started. Call to order the Plan Commission meeting of Monday, November 6th, 18th, 2024. Please rise. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mike, could you please take roll?
Yes. Dave Franz.
Present.
Mary Grabanowski.
Present.
Nick Plopper.
Present.
Josh Fedor.
Present.
Kendrick Davis.
Present.
Jim Hurst.
Present.
Cindy Madrick. She's online, I understand. Cindy Madrick.
Are you muted, Cindy? Okay. All right, well, we do have 6 in attendance in person. If Cindy does join us, we'll have to do all the votes roll call. In your packet was a set of minutes from the October 21st and October 28th. One's regular meeting, special meeting of the Plan Commission. Was there any additions, deletions, comments to those minutes?
I move we accept the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Can we do this voice vote? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. Minutes are approved. We have a withdrawal request for docket number 2024-62Z, ZCS rezoning number 61469 South, 1100 East, rezoning of 25.13 acres from the Rural General Agriculture AG, classification to the Urban Special Use District 1, SU-1. Did you have any comments, Rother?
Just to clarify on the history of this petition was originally on last month's agenda. It was continued at that time. You did not open the public hearing for it. Since that time, the petitioner, Zionsville Community Schools, has asked that this petition be withdrawn.
All right. It's our custom to make a motion to accept withdrawal. So is there a motion to accept the withdrawal?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Voice okay on this one? All right, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay? All right, that docket item is withdrawn. Next on the docket, 2024-50Z, PUD ordinance 2024-808-27. Pittman Partners Reserve at Union Woodlands PUD rezoning 11201 and 10801 East 200 South and 2475 South US 421 Zionsville, rezoning of 147.4 plus minus acres from the Rural General Agriculture AG District to the Planned Unit Development PUD District for a mixed-use development including single-family, townhomes, multifamily residential, and commercial uses.
The petitioners contacted us and in response to some comments and questions they'd received through some neighborhood meetings, they have asked for additional time to make some revisions to their petition. And so they've asked for this project to be continued to next month to the December 16th meeting.
All right. Petitioner's not present on this one?
Representatives are, but I told them that I
Okay,
would cover
that's
for
fine.
them.
All right, any questions, comments on this one?
Roger, is December enough time for them on this? Or, I know this is their second continuance. Do they think December is going to be enough time, or?
That is what I was told. If you want to further pursue that line of questioning, I would need to defer to
The only
representative.
reason I bring it up is, do they want to continue it to the January meeting? Give them enough,
The request that I received was to the December meeting.
okay.
All right, so is there a motion to continue this matter to the December 16th, 2024 Plan Commission meeting?
Make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Mike, I guess we'll take a roll vote on this one.
Kendrick Davis.
Yes. Aye.
Jim Hurst.
Aye.
Josh Fedor.
Aye.
David Franz.
Aye.
Mary Grabanowski.
Aye.
Nick Plopper.
Aye.
Is Cindy Madrick?
Aye.
There you
Aye.
go. Great.
So unanimous that item is continued to next month. Another continuation request, 2024-74Z, RFPDI LLC, Creekside Corporate Park rezoning, signage in sub-area E, 10814 and 10850 Creekway, Zionsville, Indiana, rezoning to amend section 120M of the Creekside Corporate Park PUD regarding wall signage regulations in sub-area E. Roger.
Thank you. Staff has been working with the petitioner on this and had requested for some additional information and clarification, and that has just taken a little bit longer than originally anticipated. So the petitioner has requested that this be continued to the December 16th meeting.
All right. Any questions, comments on this one? If not, is there a motion to continue this matter to the December 16, 2024 meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mike, would you please take roll?
Yes. Mary Grabanowski,
Aye.
Nick Plopper,
Aye.
Cindy Madrick,
Aye.
Jim Hurst,
Aye.
David Franz,
Aye.
Josh Fedor,
Aye.
Kendrick Davis.
Aye.
Matter is continued to next month, vote is 7-0. Continued business from last month, 2024-53 MP. Tim and Jody Davis, minor residential subdivision, 6905 South State Road 267, Zionsville, Indiana. Subdivision of 10 acres into 2 lots for a minor residential subdivision in the rural residential single-family R1 district.
Yes, sir. So this is a minor subdivision that started with BZA. You can see on the screen, this originally was approved through BZA for a 3-to-1 lot depth width variance. They are now to the point where they're trying to get their primary plat approved, which is what you're going to be taking a look at today. We've reviewed it, it's gone through, and it's met all of these standards in our subdivision control ordinance, with the exception of perimeter pathways. This is an intentional omission. If you look at this, you can see the proposed layouts. This is originally, if you do the research into this subdivision, it was originally first platted, I believe, in the 1970s or 80s. And it was consisted of, I believe, 7 5-acre parcels. And in the early 2000s, the owner, I believe for tax purposes, merged 2 of the 5-acre tracts into the 1 10-acre tract that you see today. The request, if this subdivision is approved, will revert this 10-acre tract back into the original 5 acres as it was prior to merging the 2 parcels. Again, we've reviewed this to the standards in the subdivision control ordinance. With the exception of the perimeter pathways, we believe this primary plat is ready for your review and approval. To speak on the absence of perimeter pathways, I've discussed this with a few of you, a couple that may be new. But the petitioner does have 3 requests as it relates to the perimeter pathways. The first request will be a waiver. And if this waiver for the perimeter pathways is granted, that will be it. There will be no requirement or future standard forcing them to install the perimeter pathway or the sidewalk. That's relative to the waiver. That's a little different than what I believe y'all have traditionally done, which is granting a waiver to defer, which would have required them to install the sidewalks in a future time. If you approve this waiver request, it eliminates the standard entirely. So they will not be installing sidewalks in the future. If you deny the waiver request, the petitioner has a second proposal, which is a request to defer the installation of the perimeter pathways. Unlike the waiver, if you approve the deferral, that means the standard still applies. He just has to install the sidewalks at some future point in time. And according to the subdivision control ordinance, if you grant a deferral, the next step is the Plan Commission shall require either a bond or a letter of credit. So this is going to be a little unique. And I do want to point out that the petitioner may correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we have the information here today to be able to provide you as to how much the bond would be. So if you approve the deferral, but you require a bond, we're going to ask as staff that you continue this petition to the December Plan Commission meeting to give us time to work with the petitioner to establish the bond amount. We do not have the cost estimate, or at least I don't believe we have the cost estimate from the engineer, and I know our engineering team has not had time to review that. So if you have any questions specific to that, I'm happy to answer them, but just to review, request 1 will be a sidewalk waiver. If that request is denied, request number 2 will be a deferral of the installation of the sidewalks. If that is approved, request number 3 is specific to the bond. The petitioner is requesting that you eliminate the bond requirement. However, if you deny that waiver, that's where we need to be continued, because we do not have the information available right now to tell how much the bond requirement needs to be.
Okay. All right, thank
Happy to
you.
answer any questions.
Does petitioner want to add anything to that? Up here, please state name and address.
My name's Tim Davis. I live currently at the 6905 South State Road 267. I don't know how much more he was going to go into as far as their findings or whatever. Were you still going to do that, or?
I can, or if you want to, go ahead. It's up to you.
So part of what my waiver was about, as far as not putting a pathway in, what they considered was a safe distance. I wouldn't let my kid do sidewalk chalk on a sidewalk that's close to State Road 267 where it's 55 miles an hour. You're basically the bottom of the ditch line. If you have the pictures that you could put up that I sent, I think the second picture in order.
Give me 1 second. We'll have to switch our connections here.
The next picture. This one's actually at the start of the first property. This would be the second property. As you can see, the stake there and the one in the distance is the right-of-way of the 60-foot thoroughfare. The actual property, my property actually goes to the far side of State Road 267, and there's probably 30 feet on the other side of 267 that goes straight down and out. There's probably where the telephone poles are at. The pedestal is at the back of that they just brought over and moved into the bottom of this ditch line along State Road 267. So filling the ditch and piping the ditch completely in would be a major cost. Also, if you pipe the ditch in, you'll notice the pink arrows are where the state just purchased to on the property next to mine. So all this would also go right into a state-owned piece of property. And if you can see the very far, this property angles back. This is where they're going to be widening this road, and the moving of the utilities that was in my ditch was the beginning of that. These survey stakes are all out through their property where they're going to be changing that bridge out. If you go to the next picture, that shows the back flag along that creek line. That's actually a creek right there. So unless there was enough room on the road where they're putting this bridge, there would actually have to be a bridge built for a walkway to go over that as well. keep going down. At this point, you can see from the edge of this property, you can see the bridge embankment where the pink arrow is, and it's straight across. That's where the creek is, and all that's gonna be widened all the way out to where, to the left of where this picture ends, actually. From my understanding, what they were telling us, and they showed me a thing, it actually is just gonna curve in and come in about where my property line is at. So that's kind of what I wanted to show, but you can also see in the sign right there where it says 40 miles an hour, that's on down the roads where the slowdown is for 40. At this period of time, it's all 55 through there. So, and along with that, along this year, we've already had our mailbox ran over and some other things. So it's not really a safe area that I would want to be walking. I have really a hard time mowing the grass out there without going as fast as I can. To just get out of the way, because people don't really drive that safe through there. They try to pass as soon as they come out of that slow zone, and so there's been several runoffs on both sides of the road. So that was all I had to say on that.
Okay. Is there anybody from the public who'd like to comment on this matter? Being none, open it up to members of the Plan Commission.
I am supportive of what these, I guess, newer readings of the ordinances lead us toward. It is unfortunate that this is the first test case of it, because I think this is kind of complicated.
Yeah.
I travel this road regularly, and I wouldn't walk up and down it.
And I would make sure that it's going to get worse before it gets, and not get better. As they widen the road and you,
If they go to 4 lanes.
yeah.
Which with the amount of industrial commercial that is, a mile up the road, is pretty significant.
I think this differs than a lot of the ones we've looked at in the past, and the fact that it's on a heavily trafficked, potentially larger future thoroughfare.
Yeah.
And the other thing is south of the property, you've got 2 long, narrow lots there also. So I would find it hard if those would become a subdivision, if you will, so.
I would mention that US 421 on Michigan Road, there are sidewalks there now and being installed in the future. In fact, Century, there's a sidewalk, they're being required to install a sidewalk, as well as in the Henke development there opposite Century. Holiday Farms, yeah, there's sidewalks to be installed there too. So, and 421 is also is it an arterial? So
Are they only?
I'm not sure what the distinction is.
On 421, are they only putting on one side, or is it?
Both sides.
Both sides.
We're talking about a sidewalk, not a pathway, correct? Because those are 2 separate things. Sidewalk, I'm thinking it's a much narrower basis than a trail.
And I think it's also different, it's a different area, that 421 with the multiple neighborhoods and connecting and, whether you go north or south, there's a lot of interconnectivity that does belong and go along there, and I think it is built out to that point. I think this is a very different area as well. We don't need to necessarily, we're not connecting neighborhoods or anything.
It currently is
Yeah.
very different. The question is, when in the future would sidewalks be warranted,
Yeah.
if ever?
Which is a fair question, yeah.
Which makes a straight waiver very difficult. But asking someone to bond something that may not happen for 20 years
Right.
is a very expensive proposition.
Seems like a
I would
penalty.
think. I don't know that, but I'm guessing a very expensive thing to ask.
And the term is shall. Shall is pretty, I'd say from a legal standpoint, is pretty directive.
Yeah. So so our options here, again, just to refresh, are to completely waive.
Grant the waiver and then it's done.
It's
we-
difficult not to have the bond-specific information in front of us, because it seems like all of these issues are wrapped together. And I wish I had that information tonight.
They said it's about 300 feet of sidewalk. So, I don't know, I don't know what that would cost, so I don't know what bond amount we'd be talking about.
Perhaps we need to postpone it until December.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if we act on the deferral, then they'd have to come back and say, here's what the cost of the sidewalk would be, because then we'd have to determine what level of a bond or performance bond or letter of credit we'd have to require.
And at that stage, you could decide whether or not to require a performance bond.
I mean, just say that the thing is $50 a year per lot, right? I mean, you're still talking, if it's $5,000 to put in a sidewalk, even if you don't determine the fact of the filling in the ditch and piping that in, which could probably end up costing up to $20,000, depending on how much material you have to fill that ditch in. The big problem with that is the utility box that they just moved to this side of the road is dead in the center of that ditch. So not only would you have to have that moved, I mean, that's a lot to put on a resident of one lot, you know, 2 lots to have to do that much. I mean, that's expensive. I mean, that could actually deter the project.
And I don't want to see him have to, put the sidewalk in and not connect it to anything else, because the bond cost is higher than the cost of putting a sidewalk to nowhere in. Does that make sense? I mean, you just gave me a perfect, it cost me $5,000 or it's $50 a year for the next 20 years. Maybe better off just to, go ahead or pay for it up front, and then there's no it's not connecting to anything. So, yeah,
I
This is
will
tough.
add, though, that in the past, there are a few cases where instead of requiring a performance bond, instead, the Plan Commission has required that the sidewalks be installed when the contiguous parcels, the adjoining parcels, have sidewalks. And that's language that can be added to a plat or be required to be shown as part of a deed restriction on the property.
I have that in my plat.
Okay, you've added that to your plat.
I've added
already.
that language to my plat that because this is in such flux on which way to go, I don't have the sidewalks on there, but in the plat description, I have that the sidewalks would be brought in within a year of them touching the property line of the property. The problem is that if you go to a bond, if you have to pay $50 a year for 2 lots, you might as well put them in, because if it doesn't touch your lot within 10 years, you've already paid for the sidewalks, and then you gotta turn around and pay for them again. I don't wanna be bad mouth, but it's just ridiculous that you would have to do a bond, and then for some place that probably will never see sidewalks in my lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's ridiculous. I think it's our rules, but obviously this is kind of a unique situation versus, a larger subdivision asking for a deferral for their sidewalks or pathways until they're further into the project. So there's a reason it's there, and it's a very valid reason.
And I lived in a location that had trails everywhere. I mean, I lived in Plainfield before, and we had trails that go all over. I understand the value of the trail, but in the setting that I'm in, and then what you have to do to put one in this location is a little bit more difficult. Plus, you're gonna, eventually, if you would connect to the Fayette, you would have to build a bridge for it. So,
Well, I mean, I see it in here, the verbiage you have on your plat dedication, and I appreciate putting that in there. I mean, I think that shows a pretty good, sign of good faith there.
That could entail then, if you were to go that direction and not require a performance bond, but rely on the text in the plat, theoretically, 15, 20, who knows how long from now, when contiguous sidewalks are installed, requires the town to probably have to notify the lot owners that they are now obligated to install a sidewalk. And so there is a compliance or enforcement component that comes along with it.
Yeah, and I think the issue I've got is to me, that's a deferral.
It is.
Therefore, it requires a letter of credit. And I realize this is a very unique situation from the standpoint, it's, 300 feet, kind of out there in nowhere. Arguably, the sidewalks can be placed. But does that open us up to other people with larger sidewalk requirements saying, hey, you did it here? I mean, is that, because we've changed we've not followed our own procedures?
Well, you're allowed to look at each case on its own, but again, I think obviously you want to be as consistent as you
Right.
can. The ordinance of the language does kind of box you in a little bit, but that's why, if you think it's an onerous condition, then that's the first option, which is a waiver, which you could get rid of all the obligation to do that. If you wanted to do the deferral, again, it would require 3 steps because you'd have to waive the bond requirement. But again, you're allowed, that's why we have these hearings, you're allowed to look at each set of facts. And these are unusual facts, right? You're allowed to look at the facts of each case.
And to our president's point, precedent setting, I don't know that I'm uncomfortable with a precedent that if you have 300 feet bordered by a need for a bridge on one side and not a lot of development yet on the other side, I'd probably consider a deferral and a waiver of the bond requirement. That seems like a pretty narrow precedent to me.
The bridge is selling me on the same fact. I hate to fathom what it would cost to build the bridge across that with the engineering costs and so forth,
So- All right, Roger, what would require the property to the south to put a sidewalk in? Or, sorry, John.
Yeah, if they were to subdivide, so right now it's one parcel, anything more than one. The only exception to the rule is in our subdivision control ordinance, you have one exception, and that's if your parcel existed in its current configuration I think it's January 1st, 1999, you're allowed one free lot split. So there is the potential, depending on if it's in its original state, that it could have one singular lot split, so a total of 2 homes or 2 parcels. Anything more than that, there is no exception. 3 or more, you're absolutely going to have to do the subdivision control ordinance, and that'll trigger the sidewalks or the pathway.
Do we know when these lots were established?
The ones to the north, I didn't look into, for
The
these. These were established, I believe, this one was combined in the early 2000s.
it was combined, yeah. He purchased it prior to that, and then it was, what they had was the 2 neighbors on each side split a lot. And then the gentleman on the other side sold his house and moved to Florida and sold that other half to my father-in-law. And then he kept it as it was. The language in the deed is still the same as it was in 1973. Or actually when they bought it in 1988. That language has never changed. Even when he brought the 2 properties together as one.
And then to answer the 2 lots south of him are owned by the state of Indiana.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. I'm of the mindset, not setting a precedent. This is very unique. I'd be of the mindset just to say grant the waiver.
Me too.
And I mean, it's already recorded in his plat too, so.
Well, no,
I mean,
we
but
would,
It wouldn't matter then.
He'd be voluntarily recording that if he wanted to.
Yeah.
I mean, if we granted the waiver, he wouldn't have to record that. So,
And once we do the minor plat, that was when we officially do the one that's gonna be recorded, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
so if the waiver is granted, playing out that scenario, you'll meet the standards in the subdivision control ordinance, which means we can approve the minor plat. There's an administrative process, a new application, et cetera, that me and you can talk about afterwards. But you'll move from primary plat to secondary plat approval, and that's done administratively. So this will be the last time you have to come to Plan Commission and all that stuff, but that'll be what you record.
yeah. Right. Anybody else? Thoughts on this?
I'm curious why we might be opposed to granting a deferral but waiving the bond requirement. That's,
I just don't like the fact that our rules, shall is a pretty compelling term. I mean, that's the only thing that, and I realize we have some leeway, but I just, we're just not following our guidelines. I mean, I look at this and it's really not designed for a sidewalk along the street in my mind, in my thoughts, but.
Not to drag this out too much further, but, all right, so it is the 20 years from now. A bridge has been installed to continue that walkway, and we did not grant a waiver. We granted some sort of deferral. Does the expectation of what a sidewalk means change in that timeframe? You now have a bridge you're connecting to. Perhaps now you could put a sidewalk in that's 2.5, 3 feet wide. Is the property owner at risk for needing to do something that matches the trail coming into it across the bridge?
Like a 10-foot wide paved trail
Yeah.
and with fencing inside, yeah.
state's gonna come take it.
I'm hoping the town staff can help me with that.
My best.
Because I don't
Yeah.
want to put somebody in a pickle, but they thought they were committing to a 3-foot wide parkway or
Yeah.
sidewalk sometime 20 years in the future, and now they need to do something that's 12 feet wide.
My instincts would be you have to develop to the standard at the time that you start developing. So if you defer this and there's a different standard in place when you decide to start building, you're going to be held to whatever that standard is. That could easily change in 20 years. I don't know all the specifications on sidewalk installation, but I'm sure there's elements of it that could easily
I
change.
would assume you would be held to whatever the
It's
bond
that,
would be.
you're addressing us, please.
I would assume you would be held to whatever your bond was that you approved, right? Not necessarily what the standard is.
You're addressing us, so.
I'm sorry?
So, you're addressing the panel, not the staff. At this
okay.
hearing, so,
I'm sorry.
so, no, it's fine.
I mean, that's a fair
Sometimes we
point.
forget.
I don't know the bond amount would change per se. I don't think anybody's naive to the fact that, let's say, for example, the cost of construction is going to go up, right? So if we set a bond amount for $10,000, right, and we say $10,000 will install all the sidewalks today, I don't think anybody is naive to think that 25 years from now, $10,000 probably isn't going to cover the installation of the entire sidewalk. Does that make sense? So there will be some variables and some changes to it. I don't know that you'll be required to provide more money on your bond per se, but if the question was relative to the standard of development, I think that the standard, you would be held to whatever the current standard is. I think the town would probably just get less sidewalk out of the bond because the cost would be more expensive.
I guess, unless we have questions for you, you can take your seat.
That was mainly, that was a question I had, I guess.
No, understand.
I mean, I would think if you had to get a estimate to get a bond for a certain amount of money, that's what you would be responsible for. I might be mistaken on that. I'm not a law
No,
expert or anything, but.
I mean, the way I understand it, let's say the 300-foot sidewalk costs $10,000. I don't know what it costs. We'd ask for a letter of credit or a performance bond in the amount of $10,000. And you'd be responsible for any costs associated with that and posting it. And then my understanding is our engineering department has a way to track those, so you'd get a notice every year, because typically those things are for 1 year at a time. So they have to be renewed annually. So
Yeah.
that's my experience with letters of credit, and I'm in finance, so I kind of hopefully know what I'm talking about. So that's kind of the situation.
I talked to a person on doing a bond, just so I knew what, and yeah, I understand it's annual bond from who I'm talking to, State Farm, and it's a percentage of the project.
Right, face value, correct. So, all right, thanks. We're done, so you can go ahead and sit down.
So
Thanks.
I got a question for Dan. So this requirement for a letter of credit or bond is in the ordinance. It says shall, and that's why we're saying it's required. Okay. As an attorney, I think that removes discretion, so I'm more in line with what Dave is suggesting, is just grant the waiver. So I think requiring a bond in this instance, it penalizes him unnecessarily for a project that may never go in his lifetime or the next, possibly. Knowing that the state owns the parcels to the south, I think there'll probably be a taking eventually anyways, and it would have been a futile exercise to require him to post a bond.
Let me ask a question. Can we request, I mean, we can't compel you to do it if we grant a waiver, but could we, if you wanted to voluntarily put that commitment in, you could, correct?
Sure.
So,
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the Plan Commission can, with your discretion, require the installation of sidewalks when the adjoining parcel is developed with sidewalks, in lieu of the performance bond requirement.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think the staff laid it out correctly, is that, but it takes, if you grant the waiver, that's that. If you deny the waiver and you want to grant the deferral request, then you have to take two steps. You have to do that, and then you have to waive the requirement of the bond. Now, the word in the ordinance says shall. You shall require a bond for any infrastructure that's going to be deferred, and that's the catch. But again, I think that the staff would rather have a deferral than a waiver. They're on record of saying that. They'd like to have that commitment someday. But that's something that's your decision. That's your decision. But if you're going to waive the bond requirement, you're going to have to take a third vote. Just be aware of that.
well, it sounds like our attorney is stating that we do have some discretion on that, so.
I would add that if you were to decide to defer instead of waive, that would probably require another hearing so that the owner can come back with the calculations for the cost of installing the sidewalk and therefore the performance bond amount.
So if we waive it, and then at some point the land contiguous gets developed, then we can come back and say, now it's a different situation, you
No,
can put in
no.
a sidewalk, no?
No, if we waive it completely, he's never obligated
Okay.
to put sidewalks in.
Correct.
And I kind of take issue with that. I mean, I understand everybody's argument on this. It's kind of a circle. But I don't like the idea of waiving, and I don't like the idea of a bond, and we're going up against shall.
Yeah, you have to remember, the town council adopts your ordinances, so this is what the town council said. It said, you shall require a bond. Now, you are allowed to waive certain parts of your ordinance, as you know, you do it all the time, but that's why you would have to vote to waive your requirement, because it is a requirement. It's an absolute requirement.
Yeah, we did it earlier to grant a withdrawal request.
Sure, sure.
Well, I 100% agree and appreciate that someone said it earlier. We are looking at these at a case-by-case basis, right? And I think that we're all up here because someone somewhere thought that we could reason well within the boundaries and the laws and ordinances that are set before us. And I think it would be responsible of us to, kind of, again, look at this specific case,
All right, so the process would be if we deny the waiver, which we gotta vote on first, then if we accept the deferral, we approve the deferral, then we'd have to continue until he came back with an estimate of the cost.
I don't know that we
Oh,
have
you
to
wouldn't have to
continue.
do that?
You wouldn't have to.
You could waive it.
You could waive the bond requirement, then you wouldn't need to know the information on the cost. If you intend to keep the bond requirement, or you want that information before you decide, you would need to continue that part of it.
Well, even if we get the information tonight, 10 years from now, it's not gonna be valid, so, I mean, realistically.
But when it's reviewed, though, the town staff will likely say that it has to be this much, and then they usually put an escalator saying that
Okay.
that's gonna have to increase so much per year.
Which,
And so that's the protection on that
okay,
inflation.
that makes sense. It's
Yeah.
pretty burdensome.
Well, if you're entertaining motions, Mr. President, I'll kick it off.
Please do.
Okay.
Are you doing that?
No, go right
Oh,
ahead.
jeez, all right, I gotta find it.
Let's get to the right page here.
I move that the proposed waiver of the requirement to install the perimeter pathway along State Road 267 be denied as presented and discussed in the staff report.
Is there a second?
A second.
Was that Nick? Oh,
Yeah.
Kendrick?
Any further discussion? Mike, would you please take roll?
Jim Hurst?
Aye.
Kendrick Davis?
Aye.
Josh Fedor?
Aye.
David Franz?
Nay.
Mary Grabanowski?
Nay.
Cindy Madrick?
Nay.
Nick Plopper?
Nay.
All right, so that was, does that mean it's
The
approved?
nays have it, so the
Or we have to-
motion to
motion
deny
to
the
approve.
waiver.
Right, now you have
Has-
to have a motion to approve the waiver.
All right, so we would need a motion to approve the waiver. Because we denied the denial. So,
I move
I'm-
that the proposed waiver of the requirement to install perimeter pathways along State Road 267 be approved as presented and discussed in the staff report.
Second.
any further discussion? Mike, would you please take roll?
Was that Mary
Yes.
seconded? Thank you. Cindy Madrick?
Aye.
Sorry. Mary Grabanowski?
Aye.
Nick Plopper?
Aye.
Jim Hurst?
Nay.
David Franz?
Aye.
Josh Fedor?
Nay.
Kendrick Davis?
Can you clarify what I'm, I'm sorry.
If you say aye, you are approving the waiver. If you say nay, you are against the waiver.
Okay, nay.
All right.
Nay.
Motion carries 4-3. The waiver is approved. So we don't have to deal with the other, now we just go on to the plat itself. And based upon this, there's no issues with the plat. This was just related to the waiver. So is there a motion?
I move that docket 2024-53-MP approval minor subdivision plat to form 2 single-family lots on 10.044 acres in the rural single-family residential R1 district be approved based on findings in the staff report, staff recommendation, and submitted findings of fact as presented and discussed.
Is there a second?
Second?
Mike, would you please take roll?
Nick Plopper,
Aye.
Jim Hurst,
Aye.
Mary Grabanowski,
Aye.
Cindy Madrick,
Aye.
David Franz,
Aye.
Josh Fedor,
Aye.
Kendrick Davis.
Aye.
That motion carries 7-0. So it's approved. Thank you. All right, next on the docket. Is 2024-66 PP, Bradley Ridge Development LLC, Bradley Ridge Primary Plat, 1310 US Highway 421. Primary plat for the approval of 282 resident lots on 345 acres in the Planned Unit Development PUD District. 3 waivers of the subdivision control ordinance were requested. 1, 193.052B, 14 cul-de-sac length, 190, and 2, 193.52B, 18, B, 75-inch driveway intersections, and 3, 193-053A, perimeter sidewalks. Roger.
Thank you. As mentioned, the petition before you tonight is approval of a primary plat for Bradley Ridge, consisting of 282 residential lots on approximately 345 acres. This was noticed and appears on your agenda with 3 waivers requested. There was conversation with the petitioner this afternoon. They're actually wanting to withdraw the waiver request regarding perimeter sidewalks. At that time, I told them about the discussion that was going to take place on the previous petition, which just occurred. So save that fun for a little bit later when they get up to present that. On the screen before you, just a general location map and to provide orientation. Michigan Road runs along the east side of the site. The property is also bordered on the north by 100 South, on the west by County Road 950 East, and extending all the way down to the southern border being County Road 200 South. This entire site was zoned planned unit development, and the different aspects of the project or different aspects of the petition include the residential lots along with common areas. There are also a number of multiple ponds. There are also recreational activities, some cited here right in the middle of the site. We also have a clubhouse and tennis courts, pickleball courts, things like that up in this portion of the site. Regarding the waivers, the first waiver, number 1, regarding cul-de-sac length, this is requested because there are, I believe there are 4 locations on the site, and I need the petitioner to confirm that for me, but I believe there are 4 locations where the cul-de-sacs exceed the maximum distance of 800 feet. One in this area. This is one I was questioning. I believe that is correct. That's more than 800. We have one at this area, and then one that strings all the way up here. But I will say that the petitioner has worked with staff and especially the fire department in providing mitigation for these. And through that, staff is not opposed to this waiver requirement. The second waiver requirement is for driveway locations to be located within 75 feet of an intersection of 2 streets. This is a common request of larger subdivisions. At this time, we don't have specific locations as to which lots this waiver would apply toward. However, it is common, for example, if you look at this location where one internal street is teeing into another, one of these lots is most likely going to have a driveway within 75 feet of that intersection. It occurs there. It would occur at this area where, again, we have a cul-de-sac that's teeing into a roadway. One of those lots is most likely going to have a driveway within that 75-foot distance. So as we would get further into this project, specifically during the secondary plating phase where they're truly laying out driveway locations and things like that, we would have a much more definitive idea as to how many lots this would be applicable to. But again, if we don't address it now, the petitioner would be then required to come back to Plan Commission at that time and essentially somewhat slowing down their process. So the request is to, if the waiver could be granted at this stage, and then staff will be able to monitor that and address it during the secondary plating stage. Staff is in favor of this waiver request. The third waiver, again, we'll wait until the petitioner gets up and kind of presents that topic. I do want to go through just a couple more slides. This is representative of the types of information that's provided on the primary plat. I don't want to go through every sheet with you because a lot of them are just been there, done that, seen it before. So I did want to provide one of the sheets as a representation of the information that is provided. They're providing street layouts, lot numbers, setbacks, easements, pond locations. Staff has had a chance to review through this, and we have no questions on this. Now, coming back to topics of interest for this, and in addition to the waivers, which I would encourage you to discuss, the remaining item deals with sanitary sewers and providing that to this project. The site is within the service area of Hamilton Southeastern Utilities. And I'm going to pull up one more exhibit here, and I'm going to have to walk you through this because there's quite a bit of information on one slide, at least I think there is. Again, point of orientation, here is Michigan Road, and this road is 200 South. The subject property is Bradley Ridge, is located and outlined here in blue. North of 200 South is area that is under Hamilton Southeastern Utilities. They are obligated to provide service to projects that are north of 200 and in this area west of Michigan Road. Hamilton Southeastern has told us that yes, this is within our service area and they will be providing service to this project. They have confirmed that. South of 200 South, that and east of Michigan Road is Trico. They provide sanitary sewer service for development in that area. I'm going to come back to them in just a moment. What is being proposed, the long-term solution for Bradley Ridge is for a sanitary sewer line to be constructed on the north side of 200 South, staying within HSEU's territory, continuing eastward all the way into Hamilton County over to close to the intersection with Eagle Creek, where it would then bend to the north and tie into one of the facilities that is owned by Citizens Wastewater of Westfield. Again, Hamilton Southeastern has said that's their master plan, that's their master build-out. Unfortunately for the Bradley Ridge project, that permanent solution is probably a few years away by Hamilton Southeastern's admission. So at this time, while they're saying, yes, we will serve it, we can't serve it right now. So the temporary solution that is being proposed by the petitioner is a tri-party agreement between the developer, Hamilton Southeastern Utilities, and Trico. The temporary solution would be to extend the sewer line eastward from the site along the same line as what the permanent solution will be to a point that is roughly due south of the airport runway. You can see that located here. But the line would be extended over to this point, and at that point the temporary solution would be to then route the sanitary sewer southward into Trico's territory, and they would be then connecting or installing sanitary lines extending from this area where they'd be serving Union Woodlands on to the southeast down to existing facilities that they have down around 146th and roughly County Line Road, down in that general area. That would be the temporary solution. Should the temporary solution take a little bit longer than desired for the development team. They do have one last resort, and that would be a pump and haul solution, which would require a few different approvals from different governmental agencies, but it would be truly a very temporary situation for a specified number of lots for a specified period of time. Those are the three possible solutions for how sanitary sewer, first of all, will permanently be satisfied, utilizing Hamilton Southeastern all the way over to the Westfield location. And again, Hamilton Southeastern has said, yes, they are in our territory, we are going to meet their needs. The temporary solution would be tying into Trico's future facilities. And then the third option would be a pump and haul solution. Staff, in conclusion, staff recommendations. As mentioned, staff supports the approval of the two requested waivers, that being for the cul-de-sac length and the location of driveways within 75 feet of an intersection. We're yet to have discussion regarding the deferral of the perimeter pathway. I will state that staff when this was being reviewed as a possible waiver, staff was not in favor of that waiver. Staff would like to see perimeter pathways as a part of this project. Regarding the approval of the primary plat, staff would support a conditional approval subject to resolution of the items noted within the engineering comment letter and the provision of an executed tri-party agreement regarding the sanitary sewer service. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have. Maybe not glad to, but I will.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Petitioner?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Plan Commission. For the record, my name is Matt Price. I'm here tonight representing Hinkey Development Group, and I have our team duly assembled. I've got Brad Hinkey and Doug Fleener in the front row, our engineer Jim Reinhart, and then from my office, Suzanne Baker as well. We've all been working on this proposal and just brought up a picture of our development. You can go that first slide. Thank you. So as was mentioned, we've got the full 345 acres that are included as part of this plat. And there's reasons for that. We chose not to try to do this incrementally like was done with Holiday Farm, where we came in with individual sections for preliminary plat approval, but did it all at once because, frankly, it was more efficient. And given some of the unique development attributes of this property, we felt like we needed to provide a complete picture for you in one hearing. So you see the entire land area in this one primary plat. What we will be doing, though, as we move forward, is undertaking the project in phases, not all in one gulp, and we'll be coming in with subsequent secondary plats in sections. As was mentioned, we are proposing a total of 282 lots. So you may recall that we were permitted for 250 on the east side of Eagle Creek, and we're coming in with 242 and permitted for up to 40 lots on the west side of Eagle Creek, and we're right at that number. We also are maintaining in the proposal, which is a very significant feature, is the 1 mile of trail along the west side of Eagle Creek. As Roger mentioned, we are seeking 2 waivers, and the third one I'll provide a little color about and give you kind of, I think, where we are on that based on staff's comments and greatly informed by the discussion we just saw, and I think some of the changes in how these matters are being addressed. So the first waiver, as Roger mentioned, is to allow for cul-de-sac lengths that exceed 800 feet. And that's typically been permitted where we provide adequate turnarounds for the fire department apparatus. And so we've done that here, have staff support for that waiver, and would seek it in this case as well. And you can see in places like up in the upper northwest corner, we've got kind of a bump out or turnaround so that there are not excessively long runs where a vehicle cannot turn around. And so that's typically been the standard for granting that variance. And then the second one is that we do want to permit driveways within 75 feet of an intersection, but keep in mind this is all just internal intersections. And so where we've provided for safe ingress and egress out of individual homes, that waiver has historically been granted. And as Roger mentioned, I think virtually every major subdivision in Zionsville over the last several years has received that waiver for a limited number of lots that those typically impact. With regard to the third request, I do want to clarify that our request for relief, which we couched in terms of a waiver, was relative to County Road, the pathway along County Road 950 and the portion of the pathway that would be down in the lower southwest corner of the project along County Road 200. And the idea was we went with kind of at least the historic approach for proposing such a waiver, which was to say we would be willing to install that perimeter pathway at such time that it connects to something. And we understand now that we're kind of shifting from the concept of a waiver to the concept of a deferral, which we have no bones about and understand the town's concerns with regard to those deferrals. In speaking to Brad Hinkie as we were watching the last petition, I think getting a good flavor for where the Plan Commission is today, we're simply going to withdraw that request and go forward with perimeter pathways along County Road 200 and County Road 950. By ordinance, we have some time to do that after secondary plat approval. I can tell you what our reasoning was for asking for the deferral was that unlike the previous gentleman who had, I think, around 300 feet, we have over 11,000 linear feet of perimeter pathway. And so to spread across 282 lots. And so what we were really seeking is relief from the time component and not whether we actually installed a perimeter pathway or not. For tonight, we would simply like to withdraw that. It is possible that we may be back to you at some point in the future to ask for a deferral when we have the information gathered as far as providing a bond, et cetera, and something that made sense, not some extraordinarily long deferral, but something that allows us to actually build the pathways when homes are being built. That's really our chief concern. The other thing is we're in the broader context of this development, we've made other commitments to other governmental agencies, including the Boone County Highway Department, to resurface County Road 950. And one of their concerns is that they did not want, and we don't want a pathway to be torn up, through construction activities or through activities in resurfacing that roadway. We wanted to mesh up the timing on those things. We can do that. We can do that within the existing rules, but we might be back for a deferral just as a heads up, but that's not something we want to pursue this evening. Let me just pick up one other topic on the sewer service. We are in some ways, we're customers of Hamilton Southeastern Utility, which has a certificate of territorial authority requiring them to provide sanitary sewer service to our project. And our ordinance similarly requires our home sites to be connected to sanitary sewer. So we are proceeding along those lines 100%. And you may recall, those of you who were on the Plan Commission during the rezoning, we were required to provide, as part of the rezoning process, basically a concept or proof of concept by Hamilton Southeastern Utilities that they could, in fact, deliver sanitary sewer service. And the timeline that we discussed at that time, which we're still proceeding along, is that we would be commencing home construction approximately 1 year from now and be about 2 years from now before there'd be any occupancy. So we've got some run time before anybody would be using any sanitary sewer service. At the time we provided this information, Hamlin Southeastern indicated they had several options for providing sewer service, both in the near term and the long term. And what they've proposed to us and to TRICO is this kind of interim service where we would have a force main extending across County Road 200. It would connect at a point on County Road 200. In the short term, convey sewerage to the south, connecting to their existing improvements to the south. And then long term, as Roger outlined, we would be connecting to the Westfield sanitary sewer system through our own, through Hamlin Southeastern's own conveyance force main, connecting to the east and extending northeast to the Westfield facility. And what they've tendered to us and we've agreed on, Hamlin Southeastern has agreed on, TRICO, following their corporate governance, they need to have board approval before they could sign the letter agreement. But we understand that that is taking place with them. It just wasn't available by tonight. We're certainly amenable to a condition that requires that tri-party agreement in connection with secondary plat approval. And I would just add that I don't think that is unusual in situations where sanitary sewer service is being brought to an area that's previously not been sewered. There's been other instances in Zionsville where we've had to kind of prove the concept first and then have a project in order to form the basis for an agreement. And I think that's really what we're awaiting now is an approved plat. The parties can then move forward with entering into the definitive tri-party agreement, and the parties that are responsible for acquiring easements and providing engineering design for that system can get to work and get that done, realizing that that's a required element of our planned unit development. It's a required element for subdivision plat approval. I know Roger mentioned pump and haul being like a third tier option. That's not the option or any option that we're proceeding under. We're proceeding under providing sewer service. We believe we've been diligent in pushing the parties who provide that service to move forward. They've been working very well together, Hamlin Southeastern and TRICO. We've been pleased with their progress and with their receptivity to our request, and we believe that it comports with our timeline, which is very important because we're working to meet certain contractual obligations that the company has made relative to having occupancy a couple years from now. And so with that, the development team and I are available to answer any questions that you have, and we appreciate your consideration tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody from the public who'd like to comment on this matter?
Good evening, thanks for your time this evening.
You-
My name is Teresa Borman.
Closer to the.
Thank you.
Yep.
My name is Teresa Borman. I have lived at 2714 South, 1200 East, Zionsville, Indiana, for over 33 years. I guess I was surprised and disturbed by the staff report concerning the sewer availability to the Bradley Ridge PUD. When the rezoning was approved, Mr. Price submitted to the town a letter on 2/27/24 confirming that Hamlin Southeastern was committed to servicing the Bradley Ridge PUD and that the timeline of occupancy in the fall of 2026 worked well with HSE's internal planning. In addition, they stated that my property and my neighbors' properties would not be included in their plans. Now, per the staff report, HSE is stating that they will be able to serve the development at a future date, undefined, but their infrastructure is currently not in place. HSE Utilities has informed staff that the permanent solution is years away, again undefined, from completion, as they have not yet secured the necessary easements for this routing. What has changed since late February, where it was stated that HSE could support the timeline of fall of 2026 to now? Okay. As a temporary solution, Hinkie is working towards using TRICO to provide sewer service to the Bradley Ridge development. My understanding when they said that is that they were going to tie into the Union Woodlands subdivision. Per what I just heard from Roger, it sounds like they're planning on taking it all the way to 300 South and tying into an existing main. If that's the case, it goes through my property again, as I have presented multiple times to the board. It's also stated that this temporary solution, that Hinkey Development would be responsible for acquiring necessary easements on the north side of 200, or County Road 200 South for this. If HSE Utilities cannot obtain easements in time to provide for this development, how will Hinkey Development be able to do so? In addition, it states that the temporary solution does not develop in the time frame needed for the first residences. They're going to do the pump and haul. We talked about that. How long will that happen? I mean, I don't know, you know, if they're planning on having residence occupancy by fall of 2026, will this all be able to happen? So I don't feel that's a very feasible plan either. So I guess, you know, finally, it does state in the staff report that Trico Facilities is making plans to install a sewer main southwestward from the Union Woodlands subdivision towards existing Trico facilities. Doesn't have a timeline for that. And again, if that's the current plan for the temporary, that is going to need eminent domain against my property, other properties for that to happen. And quite frankly, why would we approve that as a temporary solution to cause eminent domain against other people's properties? I feel strongly, as I believe the town does also, that leapfrog developments are fraught with challenges and should be discouraged. Utility infrastructure should be part of the developer-owned property and should not require the use of eminent domain against private individuals. It's also very disappointing for me, and I would believe the Plan Commission, to approve rezoning requests earlier this year based on information provided that it's no longer in play. In summary, what are the short-term and long-term plans, commitments for sewer service for this PUD, along with the associated timeline? And I feel without a robust long-term sewer plan for this development, the submitted primary plat plan should not be approved today. I made a presentation, or developed a presentation for this Bradley Ridge development that I never presented because they came up with a sewer plan that did not involve my properties. Again, the letter states it will not involve my property. With what I'm hearing tonight, it will. If people have time, I am happy to show that presentation that shows what this actually means to my property. So I'm asking if you would like me to present that tonight.
You've shown it before.
No, I have not shown this presentation ever before.
Well, you've shown us the property line where it would cut through, where that.
No, what I didn't show to you, David and Mr. Franz, is that the sewer line on my property is locked on either side by a creek. That is toward the back of my property, and Trico has never been forthright with how they're going to service it, how they're going to install it. There's been comments that they're going to go all the way down my property, which is several hundred feet deep, and tear up my entire property as well as destroy the woods.
And if you recall.
Yes, I do recall.
We did on the Woodlands thing, we did ask them to work with Trico to use existing kind of easements along the roadside.
Correct.
To try to avoid your property. So
Yep.
we did what we could to try to influence that.
And I'm asking that we continue to help influence that. So I don't believe they have a robust plan at this time. I don't believe they have easements for either the permanent or the temporary solution, and I don't know what the timeline will be for acquiring those easements.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to comment?
Good evening, everybody. For the record, my name is Ken Stark. I live at 11920 East 200 South. So my wife and I are here tonight. We've been residents at that property for the last nearly 20 years, since 2006. So we live just on the north side of 200 South, which is the area that would be impacted by the proposed Hamilton Southeastern's utility drain that is sometime down the future. Couple things. We know that Hamilton Southeastern has been out surveying properties along the north side of County Road 200 South. But since that time, when we've seen the survey vehicles, We've had no other communication. We have shared some concerns with them about our property that I want to share with you, and I'll give you a copy of this. If they do this proposed buried drain, we have a closed-loop geothermal that runs to the front of our yard that would need to be avoided. We have an oak tree that's original to the farmstead. We estimate it to be 270 years old. That's 77 years older than Boone County is. So we don't want that to be destroyed. We also have a buried French drain, which would need to be maintained. And we also have a pin rod fence system that runs the entire frontage of our property on 200 South. So any type of drainage that's implemented there would have to be able to replace that fence in its current structure. And then we also have a commercial driveway that leads to our property. So we want to make sure that that got repaired and maintained as well. Since we have heard nothing back from Hamilton Southeastern as to how they're going to address and make sure that these conditions stay in their current condition, I'm concerned. I'm also concerned about this planning council making approvals for development when we don't have infrastructure in place. It happens all the times with roads. I can see that there's two entrances dumping off, one onto 421, one onto 200 South. That's a major intersection onto 421 and 200 South, and there's no light. So that's one concern, and the other concern is we're encouraging development without the necessary infrastructure in place. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else?
Hi, good evening. My name is Anne Marie Nelson. I live at 9705 East 100 South, and I also own the adjoining property.
Can you,
So-
a little bit closer? It's hard to
A
hear.
little bit closer, okay. I have a question. It has nothing to do with the drainage, and my question is about the floodplain on the north side of the mapping. Is this an appropriate time to ask about that?
You can ask the question, and we'll see if we can
Okay.
answer it.
So the reason I'm asking is because I own those two properties. I've owned them for eight-plus years. They flood. It's in the FEMA flood map. So if my property's flooding already, and they go and add, several more homes, and granted, two of those lots are rather large compared to the rest of them, I just want to know what is the mitigation process that's put in place to not foresee more flooding and the flooding come right into my pool and the rest of the yard. So has anything been done, anything been addressed?
You're asking us, we'll ask them for you, so.
Oh, yeah, well, okay.
Okay, all right,
That's the question.
okay, we got it.
Do you have an answer?
We've got your comment. We're gonna have some other questions and comments up here, and that will be one that will be addressed. Is there anybody else who'd like to comment?
I'm Jim Metzler. I'm at 11280 East 200 South. We just keep pounding on this. I agree with everything that you said about the 200 South. Used to be, I've been there now 35 years. Came across and they passed through the one addition. There's 162 homes across the street from me. Middle of the night, because I thought that was turned down. Or recommendation was it was turned down. Then on down the street, they got, 350 and some odd units. And now we're going to recommend that, that they have another 282 units right on around the corner. And for some reason, they feel necessary to take all of it down 200 South. The north side is, of course, where my home is. So they're going to, I guess, eminent domain my property or portions of it again for the benefit of someone else. Certainly not for the benefit of the people who have lived there. And it's just amazing to me that we just keep passing and passing and passing it on. And it seems like I certainly would ask that you at least consider this sewage. we can't have a maybe, and we can't have a someday. And why can't we do the pump? They've done that for years. If that's your property, then it doesn't affect the rest of us. Probably, my guess is because it would be more expense to do that. But that, frankly, is your problem, not mine. you're making your problems our problems. And it's really disappointing.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Is there anybody else who'd like to comment? Mr. Price, would you like to respond?
Yes, so what we've provided to date, I think, goes well above and beyond what is typically provided at this stage for a sewer master plan to an area that's been previously unsewered. And the way you get to the next step is by having a project. I mean, it is true that Hamilton Southeastern has been out there surveying and making the preparations to acquire easements that Hinkie is going to be financially responsible for, and that's what they mean by that in the letter about Hinkie being responsible. But they've made the preparations so that once we have an approved project, they can go forward and implement the plan that they've outlined in order to provide sewer service that's required by law. And the thought process is that the sanitary sewer is protective of human health and the environment, and that's why it's being required for major subdivisions and a requirement for a planned unit development. And so we've been proceeding along those lines. And I wanted to speak to the gentleman, Mr. Stark. It's not a drain. I mean, it'll be a line, a sewer line, that is coordinated all the time with the location of other utilities that are on individuals' property, existing vegetation. They work very closely with landowners to arrive at a path that, first of all, that they don't cause any damage to somebody else's property, and then second of all, being able to work with those individuals to minimize any disruption. And it's done all over the town of Zionsville. Most people who have sewer service have some sanitary sewer easement that runs across their property at some location, just by virtue of the need to connect to the sewer line. And we're not proposing anything out of the ordinary with regard to those sanitary sewer improvements. And then lastly, with regard to the floodplain, I believe the idea was that related to property on the north side of County Road 100 South. And a couple things. First of all, Zionsville has an ordinance that requires compensation if any land in a floodplain is used for development purposes. Then you have to create compensating storage for that area. With regard to the properties that we have that abut County Road 100, I think it's important to note that the area on the northwest corner of our property is in the Tier 1 zone for the airport, and so not going to be disturbed or developed in connection with this project. And that was one of the important provisions that was added to the planned unit development when it was approved earlier this year. And so we're disturbing very little floodplain where we are. We're adhering to the ordinances. Where it abuts County Road 100, we've got substantially, the area is completely preserved, not being built upon at all. And so we believe that that's being addressed very, very carefully through the process. As I mentioned, to go back on the sewer, I don't believe this is any different than any other project as far as providing the plan. It was unusual, I think, during the rezoning process to provide as much detail as we did relative to sewer, but we understood it given the limited number of homes in this project and a new sewer provider with their first project in Zionsville. And we understood why there was a request for more detail than was typically requested. We provided that detail, and we've moved that detail to the next iteration of providing an actual plan to construct those improvements that we think makes a great deal of sense. And certainly, to the extent we as Hinkie can influence, the pathways of those sewer lines, we're very much committed to doing that in a way that is the least disruptive of anyone's property and consistent with our approach to date in working with adjoining property owners. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I'll open up to members of the Planning Commission. Questions, comments? Roger, real quick, do you think he addressed the flood question appropriately?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So Trico is agreeing to take on a responsibility that is another sewer provider's responsibility. Does Trico have the capacity to do that and to serve the other territory that is not yet developed that they're responsible for? Whoever can answer it, Roger, I'm happy if you can.
Again, where Trico gets involved in this equation is for a temporary solution. It is not the ultimate solution, it is just the temporary, because eventually Hamilton Southeastern will be providing the entire service to this development.
Can someone, and perhaps Mr. Price will as he walks up here, explain to me what this timeline is? It seems vague.
Yeah, it's not meant to be vague, but let me go back on your first question about Trico and its capacity. It definitely has the capacity to serve all of Bradley Ridge on a permanent basis. They would prefer to serve all of Bradley Ridge on a permanent basis. They are agreeing, though, to be partners with Hamilton Southeastern to provide this interim solution because they believe it's entirely consistent with their long-term master plan for the area themselves. So it's simply a way of saying, because we're here and have the treatment capacity and existing infrastructure, will allow you to connect on a temporary basis while you do your permanent connection. And it is just one of the options that Trico has made available to Hamilton Southeastern. And Hamilton Southeastern's practice has been to partner with other sanitary sewer providers in the areas where they serve. They have exacting specifications for construction, and they enter into partnerships with other utilities in much the same way that water utilities enter into agreements to buy, for example, wholesale water. What they're essentially doing is buying the treatment capacity from Trico. As far as timeline goes, our expectation, what we're holding Hamilton Southeastern utilities to account for, is that we would have sewer service available in the fall of 2026, where individual homes could connect as they're built. That's the letter agreement that we have from HSE that's been approved by HSE and approved by Hinkie. The longer term process as far as building the permanent interceptor and the connection to Westfield, I believe it is only indefinite because we don't have a project. It's a stretch to ask the utility company to do a lot more planning than they've done already when there isn't an approved project on the books in their territory. They're poised to move forward, and they've done the diligence with Trico to make sure they have an interim solution. And they've done some of the initial surveying work so they know what easements to acquire and what pathway they need to follow. But they really need a project in order to move forward beyond that in a way that's completely consistent with the way sewer has been extended in other areas in Zionsville. For example, the Ashburn subdivision down on County Road 875. We had a very similar set of questions, and we weren't able to move forward and get the oversizing agreement in place and the precise location of the lift station and how that connected into the broader sewer infrastructure in Zionsville until we knew we had a project, because it just wasn't ripe for that level of finalization. But certainly, we're agreeable to the condition that staff has suggested, and with regard to having a definitive agreement, and believe that provides the comfort and meets the legal standard for providing sewer to the development.
So you would be taking the tri-party agreement as basically de facto Hamilton Southeastern is servicing you?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I mean, it could be 5 years before they run a pipe all the way out there and connect in. I mean, you're saying it just depends upon the development that's coming from the east.
Correct. Yeah, I think there's going to be some period of time when Trico is, because of their presence here and their proximity, I mean, they're adjoining providers, and we're kind of at the crossroads of those two CTAs, those two areas, where they're available and have that capacity, have planned for decades to have that capacity. if it was completely up to them, they'd want it all. They'd want all the market share because they're there and available to do it. Hamilton Southeastern has some different ideas, and I think they believe they can be more efficient in how they provide it, and provide for long-term benefits to the community. And so that's their plan, is to take it further east into Westfield, but it's going to take a few years for the exact for that to be put in place and fully realized.
Relative to Trico coming north to 200, can you influence where they actually lay that pipe?
I can tell you this, and we've been in consultation over the years. We have certainly made them aware, and they're acutely aware, Hamilton Southeastern is aware of our desire to see that pathway avoid the adjoining properties. We do not know the exact pathway or their exact methodology of installation, but we are trying to influence that, consistent with what we know the Plan Commission's voiced concerns have been in the past, and consistent with what we've said with each other privately in the past, and we'll continue to do that with them the best we possibly can. Ultimately, though, we are a customer of these sewer providers, and they have master planning documents and pathways, proposed pathways that precede and predate our projects, and are driven in part by where they anticipate future development occurring, where their existing improvements are located, the topography of surrounding properties. So there's some objective characteristics of the properties, but we've certainly tried to influence it, I can assure you, with repeated correspondence and conversations.
You stated that the Trico tri-party agreement, subject to their board approval. Any idea when that's supposed to occur?
I think it's imminent. We had it before them right around when many of the local communities were going through fall break, and so they weren't able to approve it in October. But my understanding is it's being vetted now. I know from just being a party to emails and other discussions between our civil engineers and civil engineers for both Trico and HSE that they've worked out the details. I mean, the letter agreement that you see was crafted with the joint input of all the parties to that agreement. Okay. So from my perspective, what we're waiting on is they don't have an individual officer that's authorized to sign it until it's received a board approval, from a corporate governance standpoint.
Roger, I was trying to pull up the comment letter on this, and I think the memory keeps going full. I can't get to it.
We have to go back to the,
And
I got it.
And I guess, looking at this, the comment letter, it's still quite an extensive list of items that need to be worked through. Can you
You're
comment
referring
on
to the
that?
staff comment letter?
The staff comment
Okay,
letter,
thank
yeah.
you.
Can you comment, can you provide any further color to that?
Again, that is generated through a number of different departments coming together and presenting what still needs to be either clarified or addressed. We did have an opportunity to meet with the development team roughly a week and a half ago, and engineering was able to ask straight face-to-face just for some feedback on some of these items, which it was a very good discussion. The letter was revised following that meeting, so as I understand it, the engineering comments are current. So there are still a number of items that are still wanting to be clarified, but engineering did not tell me that this was a showstopper, we're not ready to go forward. They said if the Plan Commission would be willing to move forward with a conditional approval, engineering would be accepting to that.
And it is I appreciate, Roger, the way you characterize that. It is a nearly 350-acre project where we've gone painstakingly to preserve. You may recall, we have a number of preservation areas. We have a number of tree mitigation requirements, wetlands protection. So there have been a lot of details to work through, but we've made huge strides over the last couple of months. And we certainly feel like we've got it into the placement where it's ready for approval. And we're talking about some very granular details at this point compared to, you know, proof of concept or whether we adhere to the PUD, which we clearly do at this stage.
I guess my concern is that it's, you guys have gone through a lot of detail, like you said, kind of getting into the granular thing. I think as we look at everything, you know, individually, you know, there are, you know, these 5 pages, seems like a lot, and if you've made a lot of improvements, I appreciate that. I think it's worth, you know, Zionsville and the preservation, obviously with Carpenter Nature Preserve, that sort of thing, that preservation of the wetlands, of the trees, you know, of the flood areas. I think this could potentially obviously be a very beautiful neighborhood, very unique neighborhood that I think fits very well in Zionsville. I think taking the time to make sure these things, you know, nothing is overlooked, and then to go along with that, a little concerned with the vagueness of, you know, fall of 26. Is that for sure? What happens if that doesn't hit? You know, what does that mean? What does that look like? Do we have, you know, over 300 acres kind of half developed, half not developed? I definitely would have liked to have seen, you know, that agreement from them. I think that would kind of make me feel a little better because, you know, without that, we are kind of up in the air, you know, in my opinion.
And I can just say, I think it becomes a real chicken and the egg for us. We run into this a lot with acquire an off-site drainage outlet, to give you an example. If you don't have a project, it's hard to go ask somebody for a drainage outlet or know what value to place on it when you don't have an approval. And we have the safeguards to say the project has to be connected to the sewer or there isn't any occupancy. So we have the risk of making sure there's sewer service to these properties, just like any developer would. And we're gonna have to bond for those improvements. And so the lost time, I would submit to you, does not improve the timelines for the provision of that service. It just kicks it out even further and prevents us from gaining traction to finish it off. That is what I think our concern is. And we've got our own contractual deadlines as well. This is a neighborhood that is, knock on wood, is going to be the next location for the 26 Homerama. So there's tremendous resources being brought to bear to provide that sewer service. And I believe we've complied 100% with those matters relating to, certainly compared to, relating to wetlands delineation and matters of that sort. I mean, we've been thoroughly vetted for months leading up to tonight's hearing on those topics. And I don't believe, given the scale of the development, that the number of comments is actually very large. I understand if this was an 80-home subdivision on land that was already had perimeter road improvements and sanitary sewer was available to the edge of the property, you would see fewer comments. But for a project of this scale, given the number of overall issues, it's a very small universe of remaining comments given the resources that have been brought to bear up to this point. And we're really talking about, okay, can we get an affirmation so that we can go satisfy the remaining conditions and provide the written agreement, et cetera. That's before the board now.
So the agreement between them is already, because you have the project, you have the approved PUD, right? And so you're just waiting basically, what, a week, 2 weeks to get kind of that approval from them?
Well, yeah, I mean, it'll be whenever their board meets and finally approves it. They may have some additional comments, et cetera, now that this has been tendered. My understanding is they have added their input as far as even describing this particular components of infrastructure, et cetera. But they would need to check off on it. We understand that as we go through secondary platting, we would have to provide that signed agreement in order to have an approved secondary plat. And that's the safeguard I think all of us have. We couldn't be commencing construction unless we have a signed sewer agreement. But I don't think we get a signed sewer agreement unless somebody knows you've been approved by the Zionsville Plan Commission to proceed.
Matt, you might be able to answer this question better than anybody else in here. How long has Union Township been under the jurisdiction of HSC?
I would say probably since around, it went through some twists and turns, but probably since around 2010, and then there was kind of an amendment to their area, I believe, subsequent to that.
This has been around for a while.
It has, yep. Yep. And they've provided, so HSE provided sewer service in Fishers, they've got relationships in Noblesville, so they're I mean, I could elaborate, but they're known for their exacting engineering standards. It's not a fly-by-night operation at all. They've been around for a long time and have very specific criteria for literally everything. Much to the chagrin sometimes of the development community, but they're very exacting, but they're also good at making partnerships and working well with others. I think I've been a good source of information for Zionsville. I know early last year, representatives of Hamilton Southeastern sat down with the mayor and kind of walked through what their plans were relative to Bradley Ridge. At that time, I think a meeting was very productive, and they've lived up to their word to date.
So it sounds like you have maybe some minor concerns that if we don't greenlight this tonight, the that tri-party agreement could wait until you get the green light? Is that what you're saying? I mean,
Yeah,
you think there's a risk of that?
Yeah, I think there is. We're creating the sense of urgency for the utility providers who I think see a project that is imminent. But I think the evidence they need to have in order to move things to the next level is that we have an approved primary plat, which doesn't give us the right to go pull building permits. It gives us the right to address the remaining engineering comments and get a secondary plat, which is no small lift. That's going to be a big lift. As you know from your business life, that a lot of times that last percent is a lot of times the biggest lift of the project to get done. And that's what we're talking about here. We don't need to take a step backward with those parties. We need to keep everybody moving forward and focused on what we've presented to them and what they've agreed to do for us.
And if we were to, I'll be honest, I initially was thinking pushing this towards a continuance, but I've got some questions. But if we approve this with the, condition, subject twos, you guys can't do anything until those both are signed and done.
Right.
Correct?
Yes.
So.
And I believe we need them. I believe we need an approval in order to get those things done. We can't move to secondary plat approval if we don't have a primary plat.
And then just for clarification, maybe for some folks that came up and spoke that had concerns with everything, with coming through their property, they're most likely not going to hear from anybody until there is an agreement, right? And until there is a plan. And then after that is when those agreements for those easements would occur with the property owners. Is that correct?
That's really true, because what you're looking at right now is you're looking at aerial photographs that have dotted lines made on them. But they've not been moved to that next level of saying, well, where exactly is that pathway? What is the manner of construction? How are we going to avoid impacting people's trees? Those things all need to occur. And that's why I'm saying another delay does not aid in resolving those issues. It just protracts the process.
And then just because I had to deal with this along our road when they brought massive metal telephone poles and wanted to go on our side of the road where all of the houses were versus the other side of the road where it was literally all agricultural land, so nothing would be. Is that something you think, again, I'm asking as a resident, if it was myself, is that something you think that maybe could be negotiated with Tricor and with the two utility providers, maybe moving that to the south side rather than the north side to affect less homeowners and it's more kind of agricultural, potential commercial?
We can make that concern known, certainly, and try like I said to the president, we could make our desire known that we don't want to our project, the desire of our project is simply to provide sanitary sewer to Bradley Ridge and provide the template for service to others in the future. It's not to damage anybody's property or to acquire anything by eminent domain. I can also tell you that specifically with regard to Trico, it's a very rare situation where they've ever had to use eminent domain, in my experience. They work very hard to negotiate and arrive at an agreement, and I'm confident that would be their practice here as well.
Matt, do they bore in sewer line? I know they bore in some other, but some of this can be done underneath
Directional
property
boring.
owners and bore right in, they don't even know it's done.
Yes. So to give you an example, there's a water line that connects to Raintree that is actually directionally bored right under Eagle Creek. And I know that's also true with regard to sanitary sewer extensions across Eagle Creek in a couple of different locations in town. So it is done in a way where it does not have to disrupt the surface or trees, et cetera. Now, the town has a sewer line that goes from Zionsville Road and connects to a lift station over on Sycamore Street, just off of Sycamore Street, where they did have to go through a portion of woods, and there is kind of a column approved there, but there's a woods on one side and a woods on another side and kind of a greenway through the middle of it. I think that's some earlier construction techniques, but that does sometimes have to happen in order for the infrastructure to be deployed, but it's done in a way that's where they seek to minimize the damage to people's property, certainly, and they compensate individuals if they need an easement, you know.
Okay. Anything else?
Oh, thank you for putting the trail or sidewalks back in on 950. I know one of the neighbors was concerned about that.
Yeah.
I travel that road quite a bit myself, or used to a little bit more, but there was always people walking on it. Neighbors always seem to be on that road, so.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, Mike. And we appreciate the dialogue. I think we all learned tonight, you know, what the expectation is. So.
All right, so we've got waiver requests 1 and 2, and then a motion for the primary plat.
I move to approve waiver number 1.
Second.
All right. Mike, would you please take roll?
This is with regard to the cul-de-sac?
The cul-de-sac.
Was, whose motion was that?
That's mine.
Okay, thank you.
And then Mary second.
Okay. Nick?
Aye.
Ms. Grabanowski?
Aye.
Jim Hurst?
Aye.
Dave Franz?
Aye.
Josh Fedor?
Aye.
Kendrick Davis?
Aye.
And Cindy Madrick?
Aye.
That waiver is approved. We have a request for waiver number 2 regarding driveways within 75 feet of an intersection.
I move to approve waiver number 2.
Is there a second?
Excuse me.
Second.
Any further discussion? Mike, please take roll.
Nick Plopper?
Aye.
Jim Hurst?
Aye.
Mary Grabanowski?
Aye.
Cindy Madrick?
Aye.
David Franz?
Aye.
Josh Fedor?
Aye.
Kendrick Davis?
Aye.
That motion also carries as approved. Is there a motion on the primary plat?
I move that docket 2024-66-PP, a primary plat for 282 residential lots on 345 acres in the planned unit development PUD district with waivers of the subdivision control ordinance for waiver number 1 and waiver number 2 be conditionally approved based on the findings in the staff report, submitted findings of fact, information provided at the public hearing, and staff recommendations, subject to resolution of the outstanding terms identified in the staff comment letter, Exhibit 5, the provision of an executed tri-party agreement regarding sanitary sewer service. These items shall be resolved prior to or as part of the secondary platting or permitting processes as requested by staff.
Let me, before we get a second on that, should we state resolved prior to the secondary plating? Would that be better? Or do you think it's a? Roger, do you think it'd be fine?
Those items would be required to be satisfied prior to the approval of a secondary plat.
So would you drop or as part of? So prior to versus, it's, the way it reads, it could be prior to or as part of the secondary plating. You're saying it can't be part of the secondary plating, it has to be approved prior to. So I think we would strike that
I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's,
or as part of.
I'd be in favor of striking that if Dan allows it.
Yep, so you would modify the motion?
I would, yeah, let me rephrase the motion.
Okay.
Starting over, I move that docket 2024-66-PP, primary plat for 282 residential lots on 345 acres in the planned unit development PUD district with waivers of the subdivision control ordinance for waivers number 1 and waiver number 2 be conditionally approved based on the findings in the staff report, submitted findings of fact, information provided in the public hearing, staff recommendations, subject to resolution of the outstanding terms identified in the staff comment letter, Exhibit 5, and the provision of an executed tri-party agreement regarding sanitary sewer service. These items shall be resolved prior to the secondary plating or permitting processes as required by staff.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Mike, would you please take roll?
Nick Plopper,
Aye.
Josh Fedor,
Aye.
Kendrick Davis,
Aye.
David Franz,
Aye.
Jim Hurst,
Aye.
Mary Grabanowski,
Aye.
Cindy Madrick,
Aye.
Primary plat's approved. Thank you. Last thing on the docket. New business, 2024-75 DPA, Brent Roberts, Appaloosa Crossing Lot J, Pergola Edition, 3311 South US 4 Highway 421, Zionsville. Development plan amendment for the addition of a pergola over a proposed outdoor dining area at the south end of the building to be constructed on Lot J of Appaloosa Crossing being zoned rural, general business GB, and within the rural Michigan road overlay. Roger, you handling this?
Yes, sir. As introduced, this is a development plan amendment for the addition of a pergola over an outdoor dining area at the south end of the building, which is being constructed on Lot J of Appaloosa Crossing. On the screen in front of you, I have a location map showing the subject site in relation, or for reference. Michigan Road runs along the western side of the site. Immediately to the north is the existing Culvers, which has been developed. Off to the east is the town's condominium development. And then to the south of the site, first of all, this is a retention pond area that is designed to accommodate the development of Appaloosa Crossing. The subject site is zoned GB, general business, which is consistent with the property up to the north. We have some PB where the townhomes or condominiums are located. And now to give a better understanding as to where the proposed pergola is, this is the site plan that shows the multi-tenant building which is being constructed on Lot J. The most southern tenant bay of this building is intended to be a restaurant, and when this project originally came through for its development plan approval, it included the area immediately south of this most southern tenant bay to be outdoor seating, so that is not a surprise. What is new is the want to cover that outdoor seating area with a pergola. And because this is a physical structure, our ordinance requires that this receive a development plan amendment for approval of the pergola structure itself. To give some ideas to what this would look like, again, most of what you're seeing on this drawing is the building which was previously approved. The pergola itself, if you look on the screen here on the south elevation, the pergola is simply this area. And then from the west and east elevations, you can see how it is projecting out from the building facade here on the west, and then looking at it from the other perspective here on the east. To give a better understanding, I've taken the layout of the restaurant with the outdoor seating and outlined in red where the pergola would be existing. And one of the items of interest that I wanted to point out was when the original building received its development plan approval, for foundation planting purposes, they had included they had provided a series of planter boxes running along this facade. With the addition of this pergola, those planting boxes have essentially been relocated, some to this area, and I've colored those in green. And then they've also been utilized and moved to this area to enclose some other outdoor seating area. And again, this area would not be under the pergola. Again, the pergola area is just that is outlined in red. There are two topics of interest, one of which I've already touched upon, that being the foundation plantings that have been addressed to staff satisfaction. Second item is that with the addition of this pergola, there would be some lighting attached to it, consistent with the development plan approval of this building, as well as other projects that have recently been approved at Appaloosa Crossing. We have asked that the approval be include the condition that exterior lighting would be automatically dimmed by 50% at 10 p.m. This should be included if you choose to approve this development plan amendment. That condition should be included as part of your approval. Staff supports the approval of the submitted development plan amendment, subject to that condition that I mentioned about reducing, automatically dimming the lights to 50% at 10 p.m. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
All right. Is there anybody in the public who'd like to comment on this matter?
I believe he is online.
Oh, okay. So the petitioner is online. Do you have anything to add? And please state your name and address, and if you have anything to add what Roger said.
Hello, I'm Brent Roberts. Our office is at 934 Fort Wayne Avenue in Indianapolis, Indiana. No, I don't really have much to add. As you can see, it's relatively straightforward because it was intended to be outdoor dining. The pergola obviously extends the season for the restaurant to utilize that outdoor dining. Maybe the only thing that I would add in that it came up in the TAC comments was we will sprinkle and provide fire alarms as part of it. There is the lighting, as Roger mentioned, that would need to be dimmed. I believe it was to 50% past 10 o'clock. There are vinyl drops, which when it's inclement weather would drop. They would be clear, so you wouldn't really see them as being all that much different from when they're up. But the vinyl drops would be down during inclement weather. And then there would be heaters under the pergola to help with the inclement weather component. But as part of those drops coming down, we had to include storefront exits. So you can see on both the east and west elevation, there's an exit door with a transom above. Those are there for when the drops are down. Otherwise, they wouldn't necessarily need to be utilized. But there's no change to the sidewalks that were previously approved. There's no change to the curbs or the parking. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. At this point, is there anybody from the public who'd like to comment? I'll ask that again. Being none, any members of the Planning Commission have any questions?
I like pergolas.
And she cannot lie.
It's more seating in this tight area for restaurants.
Right.
So, anybody else? If not, is there a motion on this matter?
I move that docket number 2024-75-DPA, a development plan amendment for the addition of a pergola over an outdoor dining area at the south end of the building on Lot J of Appaloosa Crossing be approved based on the findings of fact in the staff report and subject to the following conditions, that the exterior lighting shall be automatically dimmed by 50% at 10 p.m.
Second.
Any further discussion? Mike, would you take roll?
Kendrick Davis.
Aye.
Mary Grabanowski.
Aye.
Cynthia Madrick.
Aye.
Nick Plopper.
Aye.
Jim Hurst.
Aye.
David Franz.
Aye.
Josh Fedor.
Aye.
All right, that motion is approved. Anything else? Any other business?
Thank you.
Yes.
Mike?
The consultant on the comprehensive plan project is ready to present the status of the project to you and the town council.
Okay.
January is an option if you would be interested, and we can schedule them to come in. It would not be a hearing item, but it would be informational for you, just to get an update on the comprehensive plan.
And
So,
that'd be like during the regular January meeting?
regular meeting, yeah.
Okay.
I would like that, yeah.
Yep. I'm looking forward to see what they've came up with so far.
So, good for January?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, that's all I have.
Anything else?
Happy birthday, Nick.
Thanks.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, buddy.
I just want to say that nights like this make you really appreciate the self-serve dog beer bar.
Yeah.
My
We're
wife's
gonna have to
birthday
dim
tonight,
it
too.
at 10.
All right.
I do
adjourn?
one,
So moved.
I'll make it very quick.
Okay.
Any update on the solar wind ordinance?
Yes. Today, in fact, I reached out to the town council members to review it with them, get their ideas on the concept. So we've drafted more and fine-tuned the ordinances more, not just solar and wind, but there's accessory dwelling units in there, there's agritourism in there, there's a battery storage facility in there, there's code enforcement that's all part of this ordinance, and development plans. We've talked about revising our procedure for development plans. So all of that, it was in my notice to each town council member in my attempt to try to reach out to them and get their thoughts before we take the process any further. Of course, there's no point in going further if they are just opposed to the concept behind any one of these items. So I've asked to meet with them in the next coming weeks. There's 7 of them, so trying to meet with them. So we're moving along on this. If based on the results of those meetings with the town council members, then we would schedule a hearing with the plan commission.
Okay.
Thank you for the update.
All right.
Yeah.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.